Hey there, internets. So, kind of a short one tonight for the Saturday Night Rant. So, this week, the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, released to Tucker Carlson all the unseen footage from January 6th. Now, I have a big issue with this. He released it to just Fox News. He should have released it to MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, The Intercept, and whoever the hell else wanted to have it. That was a news organization. Because right now you have people saying, oh, it's faux news. It's just Tucker Carlson trying to cover up for these people. Well, Tucker Carlson showed the violence that everyone's seen already on January 6th. Because I saw some clips from Tucker Carlson, saw stuff I had not seen, including the scene where Ray Epps talks to a guy and then he helps take helps take the barricades down. So it should have been given out to everybody, because then everybody can paw through it and find either incriminating evidence to show how bad it was, or potentially exculpatory evidence. And Chuck Schumer is opposing that footage being released. And that's more than a little disturbing. We're supposed to have, every time Republicans get in charge, they accuse Republicans of trying to be fascists and trying to cover stuff up. Well, where's the sunshine on this? Shouldn't everybody see the footage from this? If it's all about what is the truth, shouldn't we all get to see all of the footage if that's what people want to look through it? Because there's a lot disturbing about this. A lot of what Tucker Carlson showed was the QAnon shaman guy being led around by police, and you see it. He's got police officers trying to open doors for him. That is potentially exculpatory evidence, potentially. And it was supposed to be turned over, and I was watching another channel, and somebody I think is a lawyer was talking about that, and I've heard some other lawyers talk about that. That's a major constitutional violation. Just because you may not like the guy, may not disagree with the guy. I don't agree with people storming in, forcing their way in, or going in uninvited, but there is video of a gal being pulled in, and then she's asking this guy, somebody else is holding a phone, saying, why are you pulling people in? And you do see an earpiece. Those are things we need to ask questions to. I mean, it's been long established that the FBI has been willing to implant people deep into movements and organizations months in advance of something. When it was left-wingers, you really think they're not going to do it to the right. If you think they wouldn't do it to one because they would do it to the other, you're wrong. And these guys should not be trusted. And that's part of what's going on here. Why is Chuck Schumer not wanting that information out? It's almost as though they know there's stuff that they don't want seen, and once it is seen, it might change the narrative. I didn't have a problem with the idea of investigating January 6th. The problem was, I could even see that it was not going to get to the real causes of it, either what led to that kind of anger in the root causes, or that there would be people trying to say, why were police opening doors? Why were not enough National Guard called to be on hand? The things that would have prevented it, or things that facilitated it, some of the questions weren't going to be asked. It was going to be a bunch of political theater, and it was. I even read some of the report. It was essentially a one-sided piece. So why are we opposed to news organizations having that footage? Now, the QAnon shaman will probably be out of prison before any of that's sorted out. But he pled guilty. May have gotten a raw deal. Some people have been found not guilty of trespassing, because they could show evidence that they were allowed in by police. That's disturbing. I don't think that there was enough moving pieces, or that I think there's too many moving pieces to the election for fraud to change the outcome. But the fact that people felt the anger that needed to be looked at, that's understandable. So, and the fact is, people felt like they were being ignored, not cared about. Nobody cared about what they were thinking. That's something that needs to be a little more legitimately addressed, and none of that, all that root cause was not going to be a part of it on the investigation. And realistically, now we need to look at why were police opening the doors if they weren't supposed to be in there. On the one side of the building, they're kicking in doors, breaking windows, climbing through broken windows, tearing barricades. On the other side of the building, peaceful protest. Oh, someone opened the door. Let's all go in. Two sides of the building, two different sets of actions. So that should be a disturbing thing. It's not just shouldn't be just disturbing to people on the right. It should be disturbing on people on the left, because all you on the left, you want to say, I had somebody, when I was talking about a murder that happened in Portland in relation to another alleged crime in Portland, or in the Portland area. It actually happened in Vancouver. But everyone kept saying Antifa is not violent. Antifa is not violent. Yet we have footage of it. People only want to look at part of the footage. You got to look at all of it. Yes, they had their peaceful protesters. Sometimes those peaceful protesters would show up and do their peaceful, our hands are up, please don't shoot us chant like a bunch of cultists, and then leave, and then the fighting would start. And now we're going to see that same thing in Atlanta with Cop City. 150 people tried to storm Cop City, which is a police training area under construction, and they started firebombing it. This is after another incident where they tried to remove people that were camped out in there, and somebody shot at a cop across the street a few months ago. Someone went and burned down 3 buildings under construction just to burn them. No good reason. But there's footage of it. We should be able to see that footage. That footage might show potentially exculpatory information. This is why you don't just get to pick and choose what information defense gets to see, because they arrested a lawyer with the SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, the group that brands anybody that disagrees with them as a bigot, which means they're a joke. One of their lawyers was there, got arrested. They're trying to claim he was there just to provide, as an observer status. Chances are he was inside the property, which means he was trespassing. He was with them. But let's say, for the sake of argument, because there's drone footage showing this attack into the Cop City. Let's say, for the sake of argument, you're watching the drone footage, and that SPLC attorney stayed outside the fence the whole time. That would be potentially exculpatory evidence. We might show that, he didn't enter, so he wasn't trespassing. He was providing just observer status to see what was going on and being able to provide a statement later. Meanwhile, everybody else is throwing firebombs and fighting with cops. So don't think that just because you don't like the QAnon shaman, or you don't agree with the people that went into the Capitol, whether they stormed it on one side or went in because the doors were opened for them. Don't think that because you did or didn't agree with them that you shouldn't want that kind of evidence, because that's part of our justice system. That's part of what allows our justice system to exist. But the very fact that people want to suppress it says a lot. And just like it says a lot to me about groups that say, don't video us when there's protests and peaceful protests. You know, that's one thing. That's what got Andy Ngo beaten almost to death. He was just videoing what Antifa was doing, and they said stop, and he kept videoing, so they beat him, almost killed him. The very fact that they felt like they should do that should tell you everything you need to know that Antifa is an authoritarian group. They are inherently authoritarian. Just because they call themselves anti-fascist does not mean they're not authoritarian. So if you're trying to glorify that group, that's what you're up to. So what we saw there, it's indications that we need to look a lot harder. And anybody that's trying to hide that information or keep it from the public, there's something more going on there too. Because there's no reason to not allow media to see that other footage. Supposedly, one of the guys on the January 6th committee said he had not even seen some of that footage. And if he hasn't seen it, why wasn't it put out there? Now maybe he saw it or not. Tells me that somebody didn't want it seen, wanted to control a narrative for right or wrong. If everything that is the narrative of January 6th is the truth, and that footage will not change that narrative. If what the narrative of the January 6th events is not the truth, that footage shows it's not, everybody needs to know that, because I don't want to know the narrative. Yes, I am on the right. I make no secret of that. But ultimately, we have to know what the truth is. And that's ultimately where we have to go. And if the truth is that there was more going on January 6th than the narrative, then it's time we acknowledge that. You know, and just because you don't like the narrative doesn't make it not the truth. When I was just talking about that murder that happened in 2020 in Portland, it was the guy that they had a Christian group had their prayer vigil thing. Patriot Prayer, I think, was the group. And the guy was walking back to his place. He actually lived in the neighborhood. Someone came up and said, "Hey, we found one," and they shot him. And just shot him and killed him. We said, "We found one," killed him, took off, and then later tried to claim self-defense. The person I was talking to said, "No, I didn't. No, he wasn't. He wasn't murdered." I was like, "Yes, he was." And he's like, "No, he wasn't." I'm like, "Dude, there's witness statements. It was in Oregon area newspapers about it." And he was like, "Oh, okay." Like he didn't want to hear it. And I hope that person will be a little more of a truth seeker than just buying into the left-wing narrative. Because yes, there's right-wing biased media, there's left-wing biased media. All media is biased. The real truth, the real matter is do you dig through the bias to see what the truth is? Because I hit Newsmax every day. But you know what? They make no secret that they're a conservative site. So I can go back and read the same article. I'll sometimes make sure I read the same article, same subject from somebody else. Just because that maybe there's something that's just omission or the choice of wording is the matter. So, you know, think about that for a minute. Just because you didn't hear it from one source does not mean it didn't happen. But this whole thing of trying to hide evidence for good or ill, that is a threat to our constitutional system. So anyway, that's the Saturday Night Rant. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and until next week, or maybe even something sooner, you all take care.